Welcome to Meeting of the Moms, a place to talk about all the things. I'm Lorna Adams. I'm a wife, mom, and certified life coach. I think being with people makes anything a party. Thanks for coming to ours. I'm here with my good friend Amy. For years, we've spent the early morning hours running and talking together before diving into our days.
Hey, I'm Amy Rasmussen. I'm a teacher by profession, a wife and mother by choice, an optimist by nature, and happy by design. Here at Moms, we believe the world is wide open to all of us and that we have unlimited potential. We're so glad you're here.
We have recorded a few different episodes now about B- work and perfectionism and just how we can approach our lives with joy. And so today we thought it'd be fun to do a little bit of a kind of tips and tricks roundup. Some of those things will be things we talked about in the previous episodes, but several of them will be brand new today that we didn't get into those other episodes. That is the joy of today. So Lorna's going to give us our first tip.
Okay, so the first one is let go of judgment. I think that we are quick to judge ourselves for we didn't do something right, we didn't do it good enough. And if we can let go of the judgment, that will loosen things up. And then we can be curious about why we did it that way. Do we want to do it a different way? Or we could also just have compassion for ourselves. Like, yeah, it's okay that I didn't do it that way. And just be kind and loving to ourselves. And really part of this, like the side note of this is as we let go of judgment toward ourselves, then it makes it easier to let go of judgment toward other people. And that will feel better as well.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Another thing that we can do is we can look at impatience versus patience, and this taps into the compassion, that self-compassion. So recognizing that we can often be very impatient with ourselves, wanting to have arrived at a certain level of skill or a certain amount of knowledge or whatever. And so rather than honing in on that thing we're working on, if we look at patience and we look at cultivating patience along with the self-compassion, then that can just help us take a long view. It's all right that it's taking longer than I expected, because really sometimes it's just taking longer than we thought it would, right? We didn't necessarily go into something. We maybe went into something with excitement, ready to learn something new or whatever. But then after a certain amount of time, we start having impatience. And so if we can cultivate patience rather than impatience, that can go along.
I want to add a quick example to that. Can I add really quick?
Absolutely.
So like a child learning a different language. I have a daughter that's living in Brazil right now and she's learning Portuguese. And I think in the beginning, she was super excited. And then she's in the middle of it trying to figure out Portuguese and she is more impatient with herself and thinking I should be further ahead than I am. But as she can have compassion with herself, like I'm further than I was, noticing some of those things, then it makes it easier to keep learning. And now she's been out a year, she's feeling successful. I don't know if she would say she's feeling successful,
right.
But she is. She can totally communicate and is able to train other people that have not had Portuguese as their native language. And so I think just being compassionate along the patience process can be so helpful.
Yes, agree. So one of the ways that we can employ curiosity is to track. So whether you have an app that tracks it for you or your phone's tracking something like exercise, or in one of the episodes, I talked about having a simple calendar, like low tech, that I would just mark an X on each day. But tracking with curiosity looks like not so much of me saying, okay, I'm going to do it 5 days a week for 3 months or 1 day a week for 1 month. Nothing. It just looks like I want to cross off the day each day I do it. And I'm curious how many days I'll do it, right? I just want to see what this looks like. Now that it's on my brain, how many days do I get? And maybe every so often I'll look back and see how many days I got. And so that's a way to track with curiosity, as opposed to tracking with like an end goal, or like I want this many days. You just back off of all of that and you just do a simple X on a day if you do it.
Okay. Then the next one is finding words that are helpful. So as you are noticing inside yourself some of the language, like maybe I have to or I should, those things add back to that judgment word. They add judgment. And so they feel heavy. But if we can find language that is more encouraging, then we'll want to do the things. What is something that you feel like you have to, but why do you have to do that? Do you want to actually? Is it more of I want my bathroom to be clean? And so holding on to more of that language, I want to, let's see how much I can do. maybe this is a possibility. Maybe I should time myself. I'm going to make it fun. But finding words or language that can make it more fun and more light and helpful.
Yep. And inspiring and just like, I want to do this. Yeah. I'm going to share just a quick example. I think so for exercise for me back when my kids were little, I remember thinking like the kids are running all over the place and I want to keep up with my kids. I want to be able to go and do some of the adventures that my husband goes on that he loves to go and do. And he has like an active job and everything like that. And so part of the reason I wanted to make sure that movement and exercise was part of my routine in my life and whatever is so I could keep up with people and actually get to participate in the things that they were going to be participating in. I have all boys, so as far as keeping up, when they hit teenage life, mom in her 40s not keeping up in the same way, but I can keep up to a certain extent. But it went from like, I should be exercising just to be healthy to even saying I should be exercising today or I need to exercise today, some of that language, because I want to be healthy or because I want to be able to do these things with my family. And so then focusing on, I want this, so I'm going to do this.
Yeah. So good.
Is exactly what you're talking about.
Sometimes even for that exact example, sometimes it's just that I want to move my body. I know I'm not feeling so good. I want to move my body. What can I do? So yes, I love all of that. I love it. Your example. Okay. Another one is celebrating what we've done. As we are celebrating that learning process, it makes it easier to want to keep learning. And so even just you mentioned tracking. We can celebrate, like I tracked, I did an X on my paper today. Celebrating when you do something can be helpful and more motivating. A few weeks ago, I went to a pottery place and was able to paint. And I have done pottery one or two other times painting, but it feels new every time I do it because it's been so far between.
Yeah.
As I was painting this time, my thoughts were, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm just going to try it out. We're just going to see. And so even not, this has to turn out good. It was more of like, we're just going to see. I'm just going to try. And so I could celebrate the idea of being curious about what I could create.
Yep.
And then I did something. So looking for opportunities to celebrate. And I love to do it on a daily basis. Seriously, most of the nights I'm laying in my bed celebrating the things that I've been doing. We've also put a PDF out on episode number 13, I think it was, if you want to print that off. But just looking for things to celebrate, it helps encourage our brain to keep doing some of those things.
Yep. One specific way to do celebrating, in addition to what Lauren has just said, is a to-do list. So instead of doing a to-do list where you're going to write down all the things that you should do today, you're going to, or you want to do today, or you're hoping to do today, whatever. There are days when I just know with how I'm feeling, I'm like, today is a to-do list day. I need to do the same kinds of things to keep life rolling, but it's going to be to-do. And so on a to-do list, I list things even that you might think, but that's just part of my daily routine. Why would I celebrate that? Well, because today I need it. So I would write on a to-do list, took a shower, cross that off. Exercise with Lorna. So Lorna and I do that pretty much every Monday and Friday. We have been consistent for like over a decade. So that's a habit, right? And yet there are days where I'm like, that needs a celebration. Exercise with Lorna. Did my hair, celebrate that. Loaded the dishwasher, celebrate that. So it could have been a to-do list where I list all those things, but certain days I'm like, I really need that celebrating. So creating the to-do list and absolutely including things that are routine. And a lot of times when I notice that, like if I just have lower energy or whatever, a lot of the days gone by already. And what's awesome is I still put it like a task, like on a to-do list, and then I X it off right as I'm going. So it's already stuff that got done. And it's just there. It doesn't have to start at noon if that's when I notice I need it. I go back through the morning and I'm like, let's start with the morning. I got out of bed. That can be ta-da. So that's
I love it. And I love the language of ta-da. It sounds like it's a party. Like, look at me.
I know. So it's so fun. And I've actually been known as well when I'm still using a to-do list to start it. I put to-do list. Let's say it's 10 o'clock, right? It's 10 o'clock and I'm like, well, I needed to do laundry, but I already actually did the laundry. All right, do laundry, check, right? So my first three things are checked off that I already did. And then the rest is a to-do list. So that's kind of like a mishmash of to-do and to-do that I put in together. So another thing to do, and this kind of feeds off this whole celebration thing. So very specifically recently, I wanted to reassess some of my routines. So specifically like my morning routine. And one trick when you're trying to reassess something you're doing and you're wanting some change is to start with what you already have rolling. So celebrate, like I would start that with, okay, I already know my exercise stuff that I do Monday through Friday. I have 2 different friends I exercise with. That's the plan. Sweet. That's already part of my morning routine. So I start by looking at what is already part of my morning routine that I'm happy with. Then I would step into, and what do I want to tweak and adjust? Because sometimes it's really easy to start with like, everything needs to be changed. And that's really actually not accurate. I'm not going to change the exercise stuff. That's really going well.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really good to start with what is working with something like changing a routine. Anytime we're changing, try and start with at least one thing that you're like, okay, this is working. Even if it has to be moved to a different time or whatever, try and find that, because it's going to, I think, celebrate, enlighten, and inspire you to work on that thing.
Yeah, very good. Awesome.
Okay, I have a couple more. Another one that we alluded to in one of our previous recordings is the idea of when you're wanting to make a change, when you're wanting to learn something, you can set a plan for how to learn that, and then step into the learning with the curiosity we talked about. And after you've had some time in the thing, then step back and decide on what success looks like. Because sometimes we want to start at the beginning and be like, okay, success is going to look like I am going to follow this training plan. I'm going to run a 5K. Or success is going to look like I'm going to read this many books. Or success is going to look like I'm going to do this in my place of employment, whatever. Then we get going, and either the on-ramp is super long or it's not inspiring anymore. And we never circle back to just be like, okay, what did I learn? What did I learn from that? So a lot of times if we can get going, then we have a time to pause, look at what we learned as we got going, and then we can get back on the wagon in a way that we want to, and then we can define what success looks like. So at that point, we can start saying, no, it's not going to happen every day. It's going to happen 5 days a week. Or it's not going to happen 5 days a week. I'm seriously looking at like 1 day a week. I want to make sure I spend any amount of time talking to my teenage son, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I love that idea, because I think you could just start, right? Start doing something. And then, and that's kind of the goal. I'm starting, and then it can be the assessing once you've had a little bit more time and can kind of see where do I want to go with this? What could be helpful? What could be fun? Yeah, very good.
Yeah. Yep. And I think sometimes we forget that part of our learning is like, how is this change going to work? We're trying to learn how we change. Do we have the energy for change right now? The bandwidth? Am I trying to change too much? There's a lot of learning just in that has nothing to do with the specifics of what we're trying to work on. And so we got to give space for it. Okay, this last one that I have is going to be a little bit more, hopefully back and forth, Lorna, and you're going to jump in and we're going to have some ideas. So let's say that that someone wants to work at something. So all of my boys have done running, and so I'm going to use that as an example. They've done cross country. So let's say a person is stepping into cross country like in high school, or they're stepping into, I want to run a 5K. That's the same distance. Starting to ask yourself some questions about, especially when it gets hard, especially when you come up against like, why can't I do my mileage lately? Why am I so tired? Like you start having that time when you hit the resistance and the excitement's not there so much. You can sit down with yourself and start asking some questions. So why am I doing this? Am I choosing to run the 5K or start cross country because I love running? You know, if yes, okay, then what is getting in the way of you loving it? What's helping you love it, right? What if the answer is because I want to be good at it? Well, if it's because we want to be good at something, at some point we're going to have to define what good looks like. And if good looks like to us, I'm going to be the best in the world. Well, even the best person in the world doesn't sit there very long, right? Like they just don't. So I think we have to define what being good at it looks like, and we have to make sure that part's within our control.
Yeah. I love that. And I think really being so specific, what is good and what is in my control. If good is I can run a 10-minute mile, awesome. Then let that be your goal. Then I can say I'm a good runner or whatever that is.
I'm a fan of separating vision from task check off kinds of things. So vision is I want to be a good enough runner that I can do a 5K in 31 minutes. So vision. And then kind of let it hang there and go down to like, that means that I'm going to be able to say to myself, I'm a good runner as I find myself a training program. That's part of being a good runner. Okay, I'm a good runner as I get out there the first day. I'm a good runner. We can start
Yeah.
saying those things and making it part of it, not just I'm not a good runner until the 31
Yes.
minute
Well,
3 miles.
I think sometimes by saying I'm a good runner, your brain's gonna be like, no, you're not. You are not a good runner. You haven't even started running yet. And so I even love the idea of I'm open to believing I'm a good runner.
Right.
Or I'm
Yep.
working toward becoming a good runner. Or
Right.
something like that, that is like it's opening the door to
Yep.
believing that you're not quite there yet, but it's possible. And so I just love
Yep.
even that, just a little bit of the language, right? We still have to be
Yep.
mindful of the language that can be
and
expressed.
figuring out what language works, right?
Yeah.
Because for some things in our lives, we're ready to just be like, well, I decided this is what a good runner does, so it's okay. I can just say it to myself. And
Yeah.
other times we got to back up like a lot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To be able to get there. So yeah, that's just like one example, some of the questions that we might have to ask ourselves. You do this all the time with coaching, Lorna. So I want to hear other things that you might say, like how to sit down and do this questioning part with oneself. But go ahead with what you were going to say.
That came up for me too when you were mentioning this is with it being in your control. Like if it's so other people will see I'm a good runner or other people will think I'm a good runner, that is absolutely not in our control. And I think that is what is so important, is being mindful of what we have control over and setting our own standards and goals with what we really have control over. And so I love even that, right? That maybe I want to be a runner because I want to be able to be active with my kids, or because I feel like health is important and I like the way I feel when I do run, whatever that is. But something that feels inspiring is going to make it way more helpful. And then breaking it down to, so if I'm going to run 31 miles or 31 minutes,
3 miles, yeah, 5K in 31 minutes. There we go.
What is needed? And so then even breaking that apart to see, then what do I want my first week to look like? What do I want my second week to look like? Anyway, so I think deciding what really is the goal and what you really do want, and have a really strong why. You have a really strong why, then when those days are hard, it's way easier to stay motivated because I'm committed. I am determined to run this 31 minute 5K. And so then that can help pull us when we are struggling.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I think the other thing we've talked about is, Amy, you and I both run, but it is really awkward for us to say we are runners.
Yeah.
So even that idea, and I know you've broken this apart before, like what is a runner? A runner is someone who runs. And actually you're running, I'm running, like we actually are runners. We have this classification of like what a real runner looks like. There's someone that is like super athletic, super thin. They can run, a half marathon with no problem or whatever, right?
Right.
That's the definition of a runner, but actually people that run is also a definition of a runner.
Right, totally. I wanted to say one other thing about things in our control. I think it's so easy to think we've done that and have it be something that's not in our control. So for example, I am going to beat so-and-so. Like in a cross country kind of thing, or in a race, right? I'm with them all the time. We're pretty close. Okay, my goal is I'm going to beat them. Well, that's actually not in our control because we don't know what kind of progress they're making. We actually don't know what kind of limitations our bodies will come up against. We don't know when we're going to get sick and when someone else will get sick, all of those kinds of things. And so that is something to be mindful of, that sometimes we bring these things in that are not in our control. And so sometimes we need someone outside the situation to help us a little bit, be like, that's not really in your control. So let's come up with something that is in your control.
And I feel like for running, a perfect example of that is a PR. If I can work at getting a little bit faster, whether or not I beat that other person or not, that's not in my control, but I can strive to take a few more seconds off my next race. That's what we have control over. So I do love some of these sports that are a little more tangible. Maybe swimming. I can swim a little bit faster in a race, or golf. Maybe I can hit a few less balls to get to my end score.
Right.
So I think I love that some of this is so tangible, where I do have to say the bad news is a lot of life is not as tangible and doesn't have that type of a score. Right. But we can still absolutely be making goals and striving for things that are within our control that could be measurable. We have to be creative in how we want to measure it.
So that's what I want to do next. I want us to
Okay,
be
good.
creative on something that's not
Let's do
as like this. I want to say one more thing about that. Even thinking about being able to cut off seconds or milliseconds or minutes or whatever off of our time, sometimes actually all we can do is we can show up and focus on our form or whatever in a race, because there are plateaus and we actually can't control when the plateaus show up. It's just super interesting, even in the ones that are really tangible, where it's like we can stick a number on that and we can see, did I run that many miles? You know what I mean? Like, and so that's where we keep the vision there. And then we pull in patience, like we talked about. We pull in self-compassion, we pull in curiosity, we pull in celebration, like all of those things after we've questioned. But the big why, right? The big why is like, okay, whatever you decided, right? Because I want to be healthy, because I just want to conquer something. For me, when I started running, it was like, once in my life, I want to run 3 miles without stopping. Okay. Like just once. That was, I don't know why, but that was my why that started clear back when I did a couch to 5K, right? In my 30s. I did not run 3 miles without stopping until I was in my 30s. So anyway, so I think that's a big thing. So now I have an idea of what we could use for something that someone might want to work on, but if you have one, we could go with that. Okay. I am going to use kindness. So this is a topic for another day, but Lorna and I have spent years talking about the idea of kindness and our different perspectives. So we're going to use that one. So let's say that I want to work on being kinder. And so the first question would be like, why am I doing this? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have an answer for that yet? Like, why might you want to be kinder? I'll think of one too.
Well, I think when I am kind, I feel better on the inside. When I'm kind, it feels looser and lighter on the inside. So it feels really good to me. So I want to be kind. And I'm not saying be a doormat, but typically when I'm kind and can be compassionate and understanding to other people, it feels good on the inside. So that's why I want it.
Yeah. And I would probably say something, you've done a lot of work and thinking about all of that language around that, right? I'd be like, I want to be kinder because I like when someone is kind to me, and I can see the value in building relationships when we are kinder. And so that might be a reason I give. Okay. So then I think part of this might be like, well, what does kindness mean? And we're not going to answer all that today because I told you all, this has been a years long discussion between the two of us. Yeah. But that might be a question we ask. What does kindness mean? So for me, I'm going to just say one thing I would do to kind of figure that out. Because I'm a words person, everybody, I would look it up. And recently I looked it up in an 1828 dictionary, and it was really quite interesting to find out what the definition of kindness was there. So I would want to really identify, what do I mean by being kind? And Lorna already said, like, well, not a doormat. That's not what I'm talking about, right? So just to clarify, what does being kind for me? Does it sometimes mean choosing not to speak? Because I'm someone who generally errs on the side of speaking up. So for me, it really might look like choosing not to speak. For someone else, it might be like, well, I generally don't speak. So maybe I could be more verbal about the good I see in people, right? Whereas my speaking up happens that way, but it also happens the way where I'm like, that's not a good idea, right? So it could just be interesting. So that's one step I might take.
And the other question, I feel like another question that is in that same line of questioning is, what does kindness look like? So I think I think those are like hand in hand questions that they might lead you a little bit different direction. I think both can be so helpful. What does it mean to be kind? And then what can it look like when I am being kind? And for that one specifically, I think I would want to come up with some ways of how would I want to be kind in a situation that could possibly feel maybe confrontational or a little bit heated. What could that look like? What would kindness look like to me? And so coming up with some of those scenarios.
So I love this because we have the like, well, why? Why do I want to be kind? Then we have like, well, what does kindness mean? And what does kindness look like? And it's kind of fun to see, like, I'm like, well, what does it mean? That's where I got to start. And then I'll go to, what does it look like, right? And you're like, we got to do what it looks like. We might talk about what it feels like, right? We too. But I think we also could look at some of those other W question words, like where am I talking about being kind? And that really kind of helps us figure out some of those things you just said. Where are the situations where I'm like, I'm not really feeling like I'm kind in these situations? So that helps. Where and when, I think, can come in there too.
Yeah.
So
very good.
And again, coming back to like what's in our control, right? And circling back, like approaching it with patience, approaching it with like curiosity and self-compassion, maybe setting a plan, then learning, and then deciding what success looks like. I mean, you can take all these tools,
Yeah.
but I really think we can't do this all the time. I get it because of how much time we have just trying to survive in life, right?
Yeah.
And take care of our families and whatever else. But I think when we want to change something and we want to learn and we want to grow, sitting down with some of these questions actually at the beginning, or once we've tried some things and then the questions start coming, right? That can help us so much in figuring out like, well, why am I even doing it? If
Yeah.
it's just because someone said this is a good idea and we felt inspired in that moment, that's so often what happens. That's great. But then after that burst of inspiration, let's just dig a little bit and be willing to sit with ourselves long enough to be like, what is the reality of what I'm trying to do here?
Yeah, totally. Well, and I think once we decide we want to do this, I think being patient with ourselves as we notice we're in a situation where maybe we weren't kind.
Yep.
And that doesn't have to be a problem. It is absolutely fine because you're going to see some data. You're going to realize, oh, when I'm in that kind of a situation, that made it really hard to be kind. But we're noticing it. And so even celebrate, oh, I noticed in that moment I wasn't kind. Now, what could it mean in that situation? What could it look like in that situation? How
Yep.
can I do it? Right. And so I think just letting almost like the science experiment idea
Yep.
kind of be a thing. Let's just gather some data. We have to notice first. And then what do we want to do differently? Maybe next time if we were in a similar situation.
Yep. Well, and I love the idea too of, I had the words a second ago, but kind of like how did I show up in that situation? How did that work for me? Did it seem in line with this thing I'm working on this kindness thing? Did it not seem in line with it?
Yeah.
Okay, like, well, why or why not? Like,
Yeah.
what seemed to work and what seemed to not work or whatever. There were several other questions that came to mind just as you were talking. And it was this. It was like, okay, how am I going to be compassionate with myself when I feel like I've failed? We can ask those questions too, because we will fail and that's okay. We will stumble, we will fall. That's all right. So how am I going to be self-compassionate? Maybe like, how am I going to celebrate? Can I build in some celebration here? And anyone who's like, oh my gosh, I thought about being kind and then you guys talked about all that stuff and now it's exhausting. Fine, throw it all out. Do it the way that works for you. So these are just ideas when we get in the middle of that wanting to change a fundamental, like, I don't know, this attribute that is fuzzy and hard to get a handle on. These are things that one can do. Another one would be like,
well,
what kind of language am I going to have around it? Go ahead.
Sorry, before the language though, I think we can even celebrate the fact that we noticed we weren't being kind. That also is helpful information, right? Like, oh, good job me for noticing.
Yep.
Okay, and then next time, how do I want to handle it, right? So I think you can use celebrations throughout this whole thing, through all. Yeah. I mean, if you're going through this for weeks, I think you could be celebrating all along the way. It doesn't mean you're showing up exactly how you want to. You're noticing, you're trying something. So I love it. Okay, so then back to the language you were saying.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's a lot of the tools we shared can then be applied in this questioning, curiosity kind of way.
Yeah.
And so we did one that it seems like there'd be a lot of data points, lots of easiness of tracking, because you can be like, I'm going to run a 5K and the date for it is that day. And I looked up online and I found a Couch to 5K training program and that's what I'm going to follow. It's just, it can be so cut and dry and so easy.
Relatively,
right?
Yeah.
And yet with some of these things where it's like, I am not going to check off and now I am kind and benevolent. I am finished with that. It's going to be a lifelong process. And so some of the time spent with this and recognizing that it's not an arrival thing can be helpful, or to have certain checkpoints when we can just have bigger celebrations if we want them, or just celebrate along the way. But that's kind of what I wanted to model a little bit, because I think this is where it gets difficult. It is easier to do it with the things that already have metrics involved.
I want to say, I mean, I said a few minutes ago, I said the bad news is that there's some of these other things that are harder to track, but it doesn't have to be bad news either. If you want to improve on something, anything is possible. And we believe there is lots of capacity for all of us. And so if there's something you want to improve on, go ahead, like decide that you want to, and then just toy with it. And it doesn't have to be anything drastic yet. Really, you could decide. I feel like there has been something, if it comes to my mind, I'll bring it up right away. But I know there's been something that I had to mull it over in my mind for a long time.
Yes.
About the idea of doing something. And then eventually it was like, okay, I think I'm ready now. And I can't tell you if it was months or years. It very well could have been years. I do not remember what the thing was, but I think that does happen more often than not, is that there's something we realize maybe we could be doing better at. And maybe we have a desire at some point, but we're not there yet. And that's totally fine. Hold on to that and let that kind of marinate in the back of your mind. Maybe you're ready to start noticing the situations when kindness comes up. And maybe you're ready to start, I just think you have permission to do with it however you want. And that there is capacity for improvement.
Yep. Absolutely. So we're going to wrap up with our tips and tricks there because there's probably tons more. So again, send us ideas that you have that have helped you just stay the course on especially on those things that are hard to track or that are like cyclical, where you're like, I'm doing awesome. And then you come around, you're like, whoa, why am I here again? Just share your tips and tools. We'd love to share them with the whole group of Meeting of the Moms audience.
Yes, for sure.
Thanks for coming to Meeting of the Moms. We hope it made your load a little lighter. We'd love to hear what's on your mind. Send your celebrations, takeaways, and suggestions for future topics to momswithamyandlorna@gmail.com.
If you enjoyed the show, please like, share, and subscribe. If this isn't the right fit for you, we wish you well on your journey. Until next time, I'm Amy Rasmussen.
And I'm Lorna Adams. See you next week at Moms.